Joumana Kayrouz. You've seen her images on giant billboards across the metro. Joumana Kayrouz. You've seen her images on buses across the city. Now get to know Joumana Kayrouz.
The war broke out in my home country, Lebanon. I was 11 years old, and I saw a lot of bloodshed and inequality and poverty. You can't grow up in an environment like that and not be affected by it and not want to make a difference. I graduated from Yale University with a master's in ethics. I speak 4 languages. It has always been innate in me fighting for the underdog and trying to do whatever it is I can to make a difference in the world.
Let Joumana Kayrouz protect your rights. Call the law offices of Joumana Kayrouz at 1-866-YOUR-RIGHTS, extension 100, or visit yourrights.com.
تحياتنا لكم مستمعينا ونرحب بكم في حلقة جديدة من برنامج يور رايت مع المحامية جومانا كيروز على الهواء مباشرة. أرقام الهواتف في الاستوديو 313-769-6666 519-256-1023. مكاتب المحامية جومانا كيروز تستقبل قضاياكم المتعلقة بالإصابات الشخصية ومن ضمنها حوادث السيارات، إصابات العمل، الأخطاء الطبية، بالإضافة إلى قضايا الهجرة والتجنس، قضايا الإفلاس، الضمان الاجتماعي وقوانين العائلة. دائما رقم المكتب للاستشارات المجانية هو 248-557-3645 248-557-3645. أيضا بإمكانكم المشاركة في البرنامج بالإضافة إلى أرقام الاستوديو على الهواء 313-769-6666 519-256-1023. هناك رقم مخصص للواتساب للرسائل الصوتية والنصية، والرقم هو 313-327-7074. تحياتنا لكم. جمانة، مساء الخير.
مساء الخير رامي، يعطيك ألف عافية. كيفك اليوم؟
الحمد لله، الله يخليكي. أنت طمنينا عنك.
كتر خير الله. مساء الخير لكل المستمعين. نحن اليوم نهار الخميس وضيفنا لليوم هو المحامي باتريك هوران، بات هوران، اللي عنده تقريبا 28 يمكن 29 سنة خبرة بقانون الضمان الاجتماعي وقانون الوركمنز كومبنسيشن، يعني الإصابات ضمن العمل، Social Security SSI SSD و Workmen's Compensation إصابات ضمن العمل. إذا فينا ناخد وقفة بس سريعة ومنبلش البرنامج ومنتقبل اتصالاتكم لليوم لأي شخص بحب يشارك أو عنده أي سؤال بتخص Workmen's Comp أو SSI أو SSD أو Survivor Loss, Children's Disability إلى آخره إلى آخره.
مكتب المحامية جومانا كيروز يبحث عن موظف أو موظفة استعلامات مهمتها الإجابة على الاتصالات الهاتفية فون ريسبشنست. تجيد اللغتين العربية والإنجليزية بطلاقة وتمتلك خبرة في مجال العمل المكتبي. تقدم الوظيفة العديد من المزايا منها التأمين الصحي وغيرها والدفع بحسب الخبرة. فمن يجد في نفسه القدرة على شغل هذه الوظيفة الاتصال بمكتب المحامية جومانا كيروز على الرقم 248-557-3645 248-557-3645.
نرجع إلى برنامج يور رايت. جمانة، نرجع لك مرة ثانية.
Yes, thank you very much رامي. وبحب استقبل لليوم المحامي باتريك هوران. Pat, how are you?
Joumana, I'm doing great. How are you today?
Very good, very good. Nice to have you. We have a lot to go through today. We have some workmen's comp information we want to share. We have some social security information we want to share. Obviously, we want to be responsive first and foremost to our listeners' calls or questions or anything like that. And God willing, next week, we're going to talk about something that we have spoken about here and there, but it is so important because it will end up being the savior to a lot of people who will not be covered in any other way. And that is called occupational accident insurance. Occupational accident insurance is insurance for people who are self-employed and who get injured, but there is no source to treat them. There is no insurance company to pay their wages. Let's say an independent contractor who gets injured, and he is an independent contractor. So if he is injured, he does not have access to workman's compensation because he's not an employee. So he's not within the employee-employer relationship. So there is no workman's compensation insurance to pay his medical bills, cover his treatment, cover part of his wages. that person can only, if that person gets injured, the only way for that person's medical bills, or at least a good portion of them, and wages, or at least a good portion of them, to be paid, and for him not to be stuck with those medical bills, is for him to have bought on his own something called occupational accident insurance. So إن الله راد الأسبوع القادم رح نحكي بطريقة مفصلة عن موضوع حكينا عنه عدة مرات، بس ما في مرة خصصنا له وقت كامل أو حلقة كاملة، يمكن ما ياخد حلقة بس وقت كامل. هو شيء بيسموه رامي، وهو رخيص جدا، شراء بوليس التأمين، اسمها Occupational Accident Insurance. الإنسان اللي بيكون موظف وبيتعرض لإصابة، الوركمنز كومبنسيشن إذا شريها رب العمل، إذا شريها رب العمل بتغطي طبابة هيدا الإنسان وبتغطي جزء من الراتب تبعه. إذا إنسان لا سمح الله تعرض لحادث سيارة وعنده كار انشورنس او في كار انشورنس هي مسؤوله، الكار انشورنس بتكون مسؤوله عن الطبابه وعن جزء من الراتب. طيب إذا الشخص ما كان موظف، إذا كان الشخص سيلف امبلويد، ونحن عندنا كتير أشخاص بالجالية سيلف امبلويد، they work for themselves. لأعطيك example، truckers بيكونوا على الطرقات، بيكونوا are loading unloading، ممكن يتعرضوا لإصابات. إذا تعرضوا لإصابات ويمكن ينتج منها عشرات ألوفات الدولارات، مئات ألوفات الدولارات، يمكن عملية، يمكن عمليات، حسب. هن منهم موظفين، هن سيلف امبلويد، يعني صاحب الشركة اللي عم يشتغلوا عندها غير مسؤول انه يغطي لهم طبابتهم، غير مسؤول يغطي لهم الراتب تبعهم. هذول الاشخاص they are between a rock and a hard place. مصيبة اذا ما تعالجوا لانه هن بحاجة لعلاج، ومصيبة اذا تعالجوا لانه اذا تعالجوا وهن فقط مسؤولين عن دفع طبابتهم ومسؤولين وما رح يقدروا يحصلوا مصاري، يعني رح يخسروا الراتب تبعهم. هيدول الاشخاص عندهم حل واحد، العالم اللي مش مغطاية لا من كار انشورنس، والكار انشورنس على فكرة بس بتحمي حوادث سيارات، الإصابات بتصير بعدة طرق غير حوادث سيارات. بكل الأحوال الأشخاص اللي هن سيلف امبلويد، الأشخاص الغير موظفين، هدول الأشخاص الطريقة الوحيدة يحموا حالهم بحال لا سمح الله تعرضوا لأذية هن يشتروا، ما حدا رح يشتريها عنهم، هن يشتروا شيء بسموه Occupational Accident Insurance، اللي هي بتغطي لهم جزء جيد من الطبابة تبعهم وجزء جيد من الراتب تبعهم. رح نحكي عنه بطريقة مفصلة أكتر إن الله راد الخميس القادم مع المحامي باتريك هوران. بننتقل اليوم بدنا نحكي عن شوية workman's compensation، ورح نحكي إذا سمح لنا الوقت حسب إجينا اتصالات شوي عن التقاعد هون في الولايات المتحدة، عن أهمية دفع الفايكا تاكسز، عن شو بيحق له الإنسان يحصل مصاري، أيمت بيقدر يتقاعد أقل وقت، أيمت بيقدر يتقاعد أكتر وقت، شو الادفانتجز والديسادفانتجز إنه الإنسان يتقاعد بأقل وقت earliest time يعني اللي هي 62 أو أكتر وقت اللي هي 70، شو الماكسيموم بيقدر يحصله as a retirement benefit، شو التشك اللي رح يوصل له بالشهر، شو المينيموم شو الماكسيموم، بعتذر ما فيني أقول المينيموم بس فيني أقول الماكسيموم. رح نحكي شوي بطريقة مفصلة أكتر عن هذا الموضوع إذا سمح لنا الوقت. منبلش بالأول بقصص الوركمنز كومبنسيشن. سؤال من الأسئلة اللي عم يجي المحامي باتريك هوران هو الأشخاص اللي عندهم إصابة ضمن العمل وعم بيتلقوا every month voluntarily check من الانشورنس كومباني تبعهم من الوركمنز كومبنسيشن. في كثير من هؤلاء الموكلين أو عائلاتهم عم يتصلوا ببات وعم بيطلبوا إذا بيقدر يعمل لهم settlement، يعني بدل ما كل شهر يجيهم كل شهر يجيهم كل شهر يجيهم تشيك، أوقات بيقولوا له لبات هتلا نتفاوض مع الانشورنس كومباني او فيك تتفاوض بالنيابه عنا مع الانشورنس كومباني، بدل ما يجينا تشيك كل شهر خليه يعطونا تشيك من هلا لوقت الريتايرمنت تبعي بس بيصلي التشيك اليوم. بدنا نحكي عنه هذا الموضوع وبدنا نوضح انه هي منا بهالسهوله، لانه settlement by definition، settlement يعني مفاوضات، المفاوضات by definition بده يكون في اهتمام وبده يكون في interest من قبل الطرفين. إذا أنا بدي أعمل settlement مع الانشورنس ما بدها تعمل settlement معي، ما بقدر اجبر الانشورنس تعمل settlement معي، وذات الشيء الانشورنس اذا بدها تعمل معي كمحاميه الموكل، بس انا ما بدي، ما فيها تجبرني. settlement by definition يعني الطرفين لازم بيكونوا رايدين انه يدخلوا بتفاوضات. Attorney Patrick Horan, I presented the issue in Arabic. We are getting a number of calls from clients and or their families who are voluntarily getting workman's compensation checks from the workman's compensation carrier and are approaching you saying, Pat, can you talk to the insurance company? And instead of getting one check a month, can you get us a settlement amount today for this month and next month and next month and next year and the year after and the year after until age 65 and beyond age 65 and until my death? So what is the answer to that? Is that something that you can do, or is that something that you can try to do? And why is it that you can try, but you can't always succeed?
Okay, so Joumana, there's basically three ways that a workers' compensation
you
case...
can, Pat, your voice is so far. Maybe the volume, maybe, yeah.
Can you hear me now? How's this?
A little better.
Okay.
Just a little, not much.
Okay, well, I will, I'll do my best. Essentially, in a workers' comp case, there's three ways it can resolve. The workers' comp case can go to trial, and a judge will either award weekly workers' comp benefits, or you'll lose and not get any weekly workers' comp benefits. A case can resolve by way of what's called a voluntary payment, where the insurance company agrees voluntarily to begin paying weekly benefits. And the third way it can resolve is what you've called a settlement. And in workers' comp, we call it a redemption. And a redemption is a lump sum payment that takes care of all the rights that the employer has and obligations that the employer and the insurance company has. So that's
okay. So a redemption
settlement.
is a check today for today and next week and next year and for whatever age, because I'm injured.
It closes your entire workers' compensation case. Exactly. And that,
but you get a settlement, you get a good amount.
Well, we do our best. Absolutely. Every case is different, but it's going to be based on lots of factors. Every case is different. And that's going to be depending on what your weekly check would have been and the likelihood of how far into the future the insurance company would have to pay it.
Correct. And you said to me, keep getting for this whole, you said by definition, a settlement means that both parties, here the client and the employer and her or his workman's comp carrier, have to be willing to sit down and settle this case.
That's
but
right.
If the insurance company is not interested, you cannot force them.
That's right. And the same thing is true of the injured worker. Nobody can force an injured worker to settle their workers' compensation case. In fact, the settlements are done by means of a hearing in front of the workers' comp judge, and the judge will ask, are you doing this of your own free will? Has anybody forced you to do this? And no judge is going to approve a settlement if an injured worker says, I'm being forced to settle my case.
Okay. Now, I suppose that people who are getting a monthly check from their workman's compensation, but the workman's compensation insurance looks at their medical condition and sees that they are getting better or may get better in the future, those will not be good cases for settlement, because maybe this person can return to work in 6 months or in a year or 2 years or in 5 years, correct? If I were the insurance company, why would I want to settle out this case until age 65? And then we'll talk in a minute what happens after age 65. If I'm the insurance company and I have an injured worker who's 32 years old, and there is a likelihood he will get better as time goes on, why am I going to sit down and pay out a check, a bigger check, for monthly wages from age 32 to age 65 and beyond?
Well, that's exactly right. If it's a simple, let's say the injured worker has a simple broken arm, and their doctor believes that after 8 weeks that cast is going to come off, and after 10 weeks they'll be released to full duty. Well, you're never going to settle a workers' comp case like that. It'll just resolve by getting weekly benefits paid until the person returns to work.
Okay, so then a settlement, by definition, both parties have to agree. And both parties, assuming that your client is eager and willing, the insurance company is likely to agree. It's a case by case. It depends on how strong the injury. It depends on how likely the injury is to stay. They have to be reasonably assured that this person is unable to work for life. Otherwise, why would they pay, over years today, correct?
That's right. And also what kind of future medical costs would be incurred. So those are all factors that go into evaluating the value of each individual case.
Because when you get a settlement, let's assume somebody is getting a monthly check from the workman's compensation insurance and the insurance company agrees to a settlement. Is the settlement a combination of what it would cost to continue to treat in the future as well as the wages, or is it just the wages?
Workers' compensation settlements are redemptions of all liability. And there are three possible benefits under the Michigan Workers' Compensation Act. Wage loss benefits, which we're talking about every weekly check that you would get. The other benefit is medical care that's reasonable and necessary and related to your injury. And then the third possible benefit is job retraining for somebody who is disabled. So you're giving up all rights under the Workers' Compensation Act by settling your case.
Okay, understood. You did say to me, I said, let's use an example of someone who's 42 years old and the insurance company, the workman's compensation insurance company, agrees to settle the case. They will pay him his wages as part of the settlement in full at 65%, obviously, up to age 65. Then you said after age 65, the payment will not be in full. It will be cut in half, because the idea is that this person is already on Social Security retirement.
Right, and it's not fair because, as you know, plenty of people work after age 65. And
they do, because Social Security retirement money is hardly enough to support you. So a lot of people are on retirement and they take jobs to supplement the Social Security retirement check.
Right, and this portion of the workers' compensation law was written at a time when people would retire at age 65, and not only would they have Social Security retirement, but they'd likely have a pension from their job, and that would mean that they were no longer working. And essentially the idea is that they have removed themselves from the workplace, and therefore they're not disabled anymore.
Okay, and if you can say something quick about the fact that it's not just a question of math. So let's say somebody's getting $1,000 a month. That's $12,000 times however so many years, reduced in half after age 65. If you're getting that lump sum today, that settlement, let's say it's $100,000, is going to be reduced to what is called present value. The present value of that money is not $100,000. It is less than that.
Right. As a practical matter, workers' compensation cases that are more or less a permanent disability, they settle for in the neighborhood of 3 to 5 years of future benefits, depending on whether the person is able to work at any other jobs.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much. So I hope that we've made this clear to our listeners, because we're getting a number of calls from injured workers who are our clients, or their families, about this very question. Instead of every month getting a check and give me a lump sum and let's call it a day and let's move on with our lives. By the way, I assume that a person who gets a lump sum today, called a redemption, is free to start working tomorrow if she or he chose?
Right, and that's sort of the nature of a full and final and complete settlement. You're not looking over your shoulder wondering if the insurance company is filming you. You've left them and divorced them, and you can go down with your life and do whatever you'd like to do.
Right. It's exactly like with car accidents. Once you settle both of your cases, if you have both, then you are free to do whatever you want, even though a day before you told the insurance company you cannot work. You're free to start working the day after you told the insurance company you cannot work. Let's take a quick break and we will return.
Thank you.
هل لديك مشاكل في قضايا الضمان الاجتماعي أو قانون إصابات العمل؟ المحامي باتريك هوران من مكاتب المحامية جومانا كيروز يضع خبرة 28 عاما في قضايا الضمان الاجتماعي وإصابات ضمن العمل في خدمتكم. الاستشارات مجانية. اتصل الآن بمكاتب المحامية جومانا كيروز 248-557-3645. يتحدثون لغتكم العربية والكلدانية. 248-557-3645.
عودة إلى برنامج يور رايتس مع المحامية جومانا كيروز. أرقام الهواتف في الاستوديو للمشاركات على الهواء 313-769-6666 من وينزر كندا 519-256-1023 وعلى الواتساب 313-327-7074. جومانا نرجع لك.
شكرا رامي. ما بدنا نردد كتير معلومات حكينا بالماضي إلا إذا كان مع أنه بلا إعادة إفادة إلا إذا كان في عليها أسئلة. بدنا نحكي عن كم شغل اليوم كمان في إطار الوركمنز كومبنسيشن مش حكينهم بطريقة very straight. أوقات الإصابة بتصير ضمن الوركمنز كومب هو والإنسان رايح على شغله أو هو والإنسان راجع من شغله أو هو الإنسان صف بالباركينج ستراكشر او بالباركينج لوت وبده يفوت على مكان الشغل تبعه. اوقات جزء من العمل يمكن entertainment او putting on seminars or putting on events والانسان بيتعرض لاصابه، يمكن حادث سياره لانه رايح لهيدي يقوم بهالمهمه او هو هونيك. السؤال اللي بيطرح نفسه، هل هيدول يعتبروا اصابات ضمن العمل؟ هيدول يعتبروا workman's compensation ولا لا؟ خلينا من اول نقول the easy thing اللي حكينا عنها بالماضي. Commuting to and from work. Attorney Patrick Horan is going to work and going home to work and returning work to home. If you get injured, whether in your car or whether on foot or whatever it is, is that considered a work-related injury since you are leaving your home for the specific purpose of going to work?
No, generally it's not. And if you imagine, whenever somebody calls and says that I got injured, there's a couple questions that the law firm is going to ask immediately. One question is going to be, where did it happen? And that's sort of the first thing to determine. If it happened on the employer's premises, it's most likely going to be a workers' comp case. There are some small exceptions to that. But if it happens somewhere else, it's generally not going to be a workers' comp case, even if you're on your way to work. Now, if you're working and you're sent on an errand by your boss, you're still working, and even though you're not on your boss's premises, you're going to be covered by workers' comp in that situation.
Well, we just got a very, very interesting question, and I don't know, I haven't kept up in the past 1 month, I must admit, because things are so busy here at work with what's happening nationally. However, we have a question from Fatme who says, can my employee who is diagnosed with COVID-19 make a workman's compensation claim?
And the answer to that is yes, they can make the claim. The problem is they will have to somehow show that the exposure happened on the job.
At work.
Right.
Okay. So as an
example, I've had clients in the past in the healthcare profession who have a needle stick and are infected with an infectious disease, and it's clearly on the job, and that's clearly workers' comp.
Well, that's an easy one because part of what you do is to use needles and you can prick yourself. But here, if it's an employee who has no reason to be exposed to COVID-19, it's not a health setting, but let's say it's an office job, you still say that if you can prove that the employee contracted COVID-19 in the workplace, maybe from another coworker or from a client, then you can make a workman's compensation claim.
Right. And you can bet that, especially a severe case, and we know that COVID runs the gamut from symptoms like a simple cold up to obviously fatality, but you can bet that these cases are going to be litigated. And it's going to be new law that's going to have to be made.
Okay, so you just answered the second part of my question. Is that your feel or is that your legal opinion? And I think you just answered. I don't think there's been enough time for these cases to go through the court system and for us to know that a court has ruled so and so. So I think it's a kind of wait and see.
That's right, and I know you watched the last election carefully, and Michigan Supreme Court now has a majority that's likely to be more friendly towards workers. So that's good news for us.
That's right. That's right. And maybe slip and fall and premises liability is going to come back again here in the state of Michigan. And these cases, these COVID-19 cases, they're going to be very fact specific, won't they?
Yeah, absolutely. And, you're going to have through contact tracing, you're going to have to show that it's the job that did it. And who knows if the person goes home at night and catches it because they went to a party, how do they know that it didn't happen there?
Mm-hmm. Okay. Another question from Ali. What happens if you are involved in an accident? I assume that means car accident. In an accident, in the scope of your employment, while driving your own personal vehicle? I can answer that.
I know you can.
Says Ali, because you are in a car accident, you have rights like anybody else who's in a car accident. And because you were on the job, because your employer asked you to do something that is work-related, you are entitled to workman's compensation. Now, the fact, says Ali, that's a red herring. The fact that you were using your own personal car is immaterial. Immaterial. First, you're going to apply to workman's comp. They will be responsible for all of your medical bills and the first 65-70% of your wages. You will also apply to your own personal car insurance company, and they will pick up the difference in your wages up to 85%. It's going to be another 20 to 25% that your personal car insurance company will pick up. It will also pay you household services, also attending care, if you are eligible for that because you really need personal help. Attorney Patrick Horan, is there anything more you want to add to what I just said?
Well, Joumana, I'm sure you'd also want to add that if in that car accident, the accident was not the fault of the worker, but rather was hit by another car, they're going to have another lawsuit, aren't they?
Exactly. I was going to also add that a person who is in a work-related car accident may end up benefiting from three sources. One is the workman's compensation insurance company. One is their own auto insurance company. And the bigger of the two is if they have not caused the accident, but rather somebody else caused them the accident, from the insurance company of the at-fault driver for pain and suffering, physical pain and mental suffering. Physical pain and mental suffering, one of the things I wanted to again hit on today or approach today is not something, very sadly, you are entitled to in workman's compensation. Do you want to say something about that? Because sometimes it's unfair, because sometimes it's the negligence of the employer that caused the employee to be hurt. That employee is treating and going to physical therapy and took time off and had surgery and is suffering greatly. And that employee can only get payment of his medical bills and a percentage of his wages and nothing more. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Right. So workers' comp is a trade-off that was negotiated between labor and management 100 years ago. And the trade-off is it's a no-fault system, and you don't have to prove whose fault it was that you got hurt. But the trade-off is you don't get the benefits that you get in a circuit court case. You don't get pain and suffering. You don't get loss of consortium for your wife if you're married. All the things you could get in front of a jury, we can't win in workers' comp. Now, the interesting thing about that is a lot of times employers argue that an accident didn't happen in the course of employment, but if that accident was through the negligence of the employer, but not deemed to be workers' comp, well, then you're going to be able to sue them in circuit court and perhaps get more.
Right, but if it's not workman's comp, if it is workman's comp, you don't have access to pain and suffering.
That's right. We've talked before. If it's workers' comp, all I can win for you are wage loss benefits while you're disabled and medical care related to your injury.
And the point we've made before, and it bears repeating, is that no one is happy at the end of a workman's comp settlement or case, because you are never made whole again. Not only do you have injuries that in all likelihood you will have to deal with for the rest of your life, but you will never be paid 100% of what you lost had you been working. You will never be paid that. Nobody gets paid that, because that's the way the workman's comp laws are set. You get a percentage, and then there are reductions for Medicare and this and that. And so no one likes to be or is happy being in a work-related injury. This isn't like in a car accident. In a car accident, you have benefits you've never heard of, like household services that pay you money, attending care, and pain and suffering. But in a workman's comp, you don't even get 100% of your wages. So, you made $100,000 a year, and now you're going to walk with $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 a year. You were better off working. So workman's comp does not make you whole in any way, shape, or form. What about travel cases? If someone has been asked by his employer to travel to another state to conduct business and is staying in a motel, so let's keep the car out of it for a minute, and is staying in a motel and gets injured, I don't know. Is that considered a work-related injury?
Well, so these are interesting cases, and they've changed in the last 10 or 15 years a little bit in Michigan. The first analysis is, are you doing the work that's a benefit to the employer? And if it is, it's presumed to be workers' comp. Now, what if while you're on that trip for the employer, you go play around the golf and you get injured when you're golfing with? Now you've taken it out of the workers' comp environment because you're enjoying a social or recreational activity, and the courts have said that that's no longer workers' comp. The interesting case on point was a flight attendant who was at a hotel on a layover, and when she was reclining on a pool chair at the hotel, the pool chair collapsed and hurt her. Well, the court held that that's not workers' comp because the major purpose of what she was doing was social recreational by the pool.
Right. However, she may have a cause of action or a claim against the hotel for negligence there.
Right. Absolutely.
Okay. Very good. Thank you so much. Now, very interesting. You shared that if you are driving to work and you arrive at the parking lot or the parking structure, and you are walking to your place of business and you get injured, that is a work-related injury, and you will be able to get workman's compensation.
Yeah, almost always. Even though you haven't yet punched in or clocked in at your job, at that point you're going to work more than just commuting. You're actually on the premises and going to work. Some of it can be analyzed whether the parking lot is owned or operated by the employer too.
What if, because that was going to be my next question, can this person not only get workman's comp, but also file possibly a negligent cause of action against whoever is operating the parking structure if it's not the employer?
Sure, that's real common. You can imagine, you mentioned a minute ago, slip and fall type cases. A lot of employers contract out the maintenance of their parking lot. And if the contractor that was tasked with keeping the parking lot safe is negligent and leaves it slippery or unlit or in poor repair, and that causes the injury, you'd have a separate lawsuit against that contractor in addition to your workers' comp case against the employer.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Very quickly, we'll use another example. If your employer, you told me about a client who was employed by a Michigan credit union and has been asked to put together a little golf outing on behalf of her employer. And on her way there, she was driving in the car. She got injured. That's a lot like Mr. Ali's question. Yes, she was within the scope of her employment, and she will be able to get workman's compensation and no-fault benefits. And now, if she is driving her employer's car, then the priority is that the no-fault benefits, meaning the replacement services, attending care, and the wage loss differential does not come from her own personal car insurance. It comes from her employer's car insurance. So people who drive employer vehicles and get into a car accident, the priority flips. It's the employer's car insurance as priority number one. And so this person who is or was a client of yours was able to get workman's compensation and then car insurance benefits, no-fault benefits, and possibly a case for pain and suffering against another driver if she was in a collision and she did not cause the accident.
Right. And the defendant in that case, the insurance company in workers' comp in that case, they tried to make arguments that she wasn't maybe taking the most direct route from the golf outing back to the hotel, or that she had somehow deviated from that, and the judge would have none of it. That was all held to be workers' comp.
Okay. Yes. Okay. Thank you very much. Let's repeat the phone number to call if you have any questions regarding workman's compensation, SSI, SSD. The number to call is 313-769-6666. And if you just want to send us a question, and that's totally fine, 313-327-7074. Again, that number is 313-327-7074. I want to flip a little bit to a topic we haven't talked about a whole lot lately. It does not require a Social Security lawyer. It does not require, Patrick Horan wanted me to let everybody know that what we're about to talk about now does not require a Social Security attorney. You don't need, to have part of your payments from the Social Security Administration be taken for an attorney's fee. But we want to share this as a public service because there is not enough, about this. It's very important for us, when you get paid cash and you don't declare the cash, not only is it an IRS violation and a state of Michigan Treasury violation, not only is it illegal, not only is it fraud, but in addition to that, you are depriving yourself and you may be depriving your surviving spouse as well as your dependents when you pass from money they can get, you get. So you have to look at this, and we're going to take Ustaz Jamal's call in a second. You have to look at this in the short term, and you have to look at this in the long term. In the short term, it's illegal. In the long term, you're not building Social Security credit. And if you are in an injury, you're not going to get SSD. And when you retire, because God willing, you're going to live long enough to retire, which is as little as age 62, as much as age 70, you are not going to get a Social Security retirement check when you need it most, which is the idea is when you retire, you work less and you make less money. And God forbid, if you pass, your widow or widower and your dependents will not get a check. So you have to think about that. We'll expound on that after we take Mr. Jamal's call. Mr. Jamal, تفضل.
مرحبا. عندي بنت معاقة.
نعم.
مرحبا. عندي بنت معاقة عمرها 19 سنة.
اوكي.
فبدي أقدم لها على الSSI. فهل بياخذوا هذا من حق الانكم ده يكون مثلا مرتفع بنسبة 45,000 أو 50,000 أم أنها فوق 18 يعني ما تتدخل بحق الانكم؟
Very good question, and I think I can answer it myself, but I'm going to also ask Attorney Patrick Horan. I was looking at that earlier today, actually, and I'm going to pull out the pamphlet for that. The question of Mr. Jamal has to do with Social Security for children. However, his child, I was looking at the definition of SSI for children, and I wish I can find the pamphlet real quick here. So that here it is. So his question is, my daughter is disabled and she is 19 years old. If I apply for disability for her, or for SSI for her, are they going to take my income and the household income into consideration?
And the answer, I think, is yes.
Well, I'll tell you what the definition of a child. The definition of a child is someone under age 18, or she is 19, someone under age 20 but who is regularly attending school. أستاذ جمال، هل بنتك عم بتروح على المدرسة أو على الجامعة؟
كانت تروح على المدرسة بس لما خلصت الثانوية خلاص.
So he's saying that she is not regularly attending school. So I think she would be considered an adult.
That's
and
right.
They have, okay. Oh, okay, I misunderstood you. So they are going to treat her as an adult, and the income of her parents, will it matter if she still lives in the house, or are they going to evaluate the impairment and the income as an adult?
They will evaluate it as an adult.
Okay, so they will not take into consideration the income of the parents.
Right.
Okay, I understand. أستاذ جمال، بما إنه بنتك صار عمرها فوق ال 18 تعتبر adult، وهون رح يتطلعوا as an adult، as an adult دايما بياخدوا the household income into consideration، رح ياخدوه كعامل، بس ما رح يختلف عن إذا أنت كنت مقدم. هي عايشة معكم، ما هيك؟
نعم.
أوكي. الإنسان اللي بيقدم على SSI إن كان صغير أو إن كان adult، لنقول هلأ سيدي عم تتسمع بدها تقدم على SSI، بدهم ياخدوا بعين الاعتبار عدد الأشخاص اللي عايشين معها بالبيت وشو المدخول اللي عم بيفوت على البيت. بنتك إن كانت طفلة بدهم ياخدوا إنكم الأهل، وإن كانت adult إذا عايشة معكم كمان بدهم ياخدوا إنكم الأهل أو إنكم العايشين معها بالبيت. بس
تمام. في سؤال ثاني عندي.
But if she no longer lives with you، إذا ما عادت عايشة معك ساعتها خلص صارت وحدة، ومدخول البيت ما بيعود مهم، ما بيعود عامل.
في سؤال ثاني، يعني هل هناك أي مساعدات للوالدة إنها بتعتني فيها غير SSI، ولا SSI يعتبر مساعدة للأم وللبنت؟
His question is, if the mom of his disabled 19-year-old child helps out the 19-year-old child, will there be additional benefits other than SSI payments and Medicaid? Do you know? And I know, Pat, that you don't do this because you don't need a lawyer for this.
Right, and I think that the state Family Dependence Agency might have some sort of support to help caregivers like this, depending on the level of disability. But it's not going to be through SSI; it'll be through the state.
Okay, so it is again. What is it? The social.
Well, they used to call it the Family Dependence Agency. I guess it's
FIA. Okay.
Yeah.
So أستاذ جمال، ممكن يجي مساعدة مادية لزوجتك إذا خدمتها، بس ما بيكون عبر ال SSI، ما بيكون عبر ال SSA Social Security Administration، بيكون عبر ال Family Independence Agency. اتصل فيهم وتكلم معهم وشوف شو الشروط، شو المطلوب لحتى تقدر مرتك تقدم خدمات لبنتك ولا ربما يدفعوا عليها.
Family Independent Agency؟
نعم، Family Independent Agency FIA.
FIA. Thank you very much, Joumana. شكرا كثير.
نعم، يا أهلا وسهلا أستاذ، وشكرا على هيدا الاتصال. نشوف إذا عنا شيء اتصال تاني أو شيء سؤال تاني قبل ما نحكي عن السوشيال سيكوريتي ريتايرمنت. اللي بحب يتصل نحن نعطي دقيقة أو دقيقتين 313-769-6666. اللي بيحب يبعث لنا سؤال 313-327-7074. رامي حكيم بالسابق انه لازم نطلع للمدى القريب ولازم نطلع للمدى البعيد. المدى البعيد هو من بعد ما نتقاعد. المدى البعيد هو لا سمح الله اذا توفينا وعندنا زوج او زوجه وعندنا ديبندنس، يعني اطفال دون عمر 18. الاشخاص اللي موظفين عن جد موظفين، employer relationship، مثل أنا مثلا، أنا صاحبة المكتب I'm an employee، حضرتك you are an employee. نحن شئنا أو أبينا في قانون اسمه فايكا بيقول إنه على كل فرنك منطلعه، على كل قرش منطلعه، على كل دولار منطلعه، واجباتنا نحن ندفع 7 سنتس 0.65 على كل دولار، وواجبات رب العمل to match 7.65% كمان. يعني الموظف اللي بيكلف الموظف اللي بيكلف رب العمل دولار عم بيكلف رب العمل أكثر من دولار، عم بيكلفه دولار و7.65. الموظف اللي بيكلف رب العمل 100,000 عم بيكلف رب العمل 107,650 دولار. الموظف اللي بيكلف رب العمل 10,000 عم بيكلفه 10,765 دولار. هذا القانون بيسموه فايكا. النص is withheld، يعني رب العمل مجبور يشيله من معاش الموظف، والنص الثاني رب العمل بيعمل له ماتش. يعني الحكومة بتحصل على 15.3%. يعني كل موظف الحكومة، كل موظف لنقول بيعمل 100,000، الحكومة عم تحصل، هيدا مش income tax، هيدا مش ضريبة آخر السنة، هيدا فايكا تاكس، هيدا مساهمة كل موظف للسوشيال سيكوريتي سيستم، للميديكيد، للميديكير، للانيمبلويمنت والى اخره. كل موظف بيعمل 100,000، 15,300 دولار بيروحوا للكوفرز، للحكومة، للميديكيد، للسوشيال سيكوريتي، للأس اس دي، وللسوشيال سيكوريتي ريتايرمنت. يعني كل ما الإنسان اشتغل وكل ما طول بالشغل وكل ما معاشه أعلى بدها ريزكاب، كل ما هيدا الإنسان عم بيساهم للسوشيال سيكوريتي. القانون بيقول مش بس عم بيساهم لغيره، وهو كمان وقت بده يتقاعد بدنا نكافيه لأنه هو ساهم. يعني 15.3% مش كلها بتروح لندفع SSI للآخرين وSSD للآخرين وميديكيد للآخرين وميديكير للآخرين، إلنا نحن كمان وقت اللي حنعوز الميديكيد من بعد عمر طويل، من بعد ما نتقاعد، إلنا نحن كمان لناخد SSD payment إذا صار عنا إصابة، إلنا نحن كمان إذا توفينا وعنا زوج أو زوجة وعنا أطفال. الأشخاص اللي بينبسطوا إنه ما عم يدفعوا ضريبة كمان هن كل شيء له ثمنه. يعني ما عم ندفع ضريبة بالإضافة إنه هو مخالفة للقانون. كمان هذا الإنسان مش عم يبني الفايكا تبعه، مش عم يبني السوشيال سيكوريتي تبعه، مش بس عم يحرم غيره من مصاري، وعم يحرم حاله وقت اللي بده يتقاعد من مصاري، وعم يحرم أطفال، وعم يحرم حاله من SSD إذا ما دفع. هلا اوتوماتيكلي الاشخاص موظفين their employees هيدول نعرفوا ولا ما عرفوا عم بيساهموا، ورب العمل تبعهم عم بيساهم، النص عليهم والنص على رب العمل. هيدي من الاسباب الاساسيه اللي في كتير عالم للاسف بالجاليه الموجوده هون بيحبوا يشغلوا عالم بيسمون independent contractors، ما بيسمون employees، لأنه عم بيحاولوا ما يدفعوا عليهم 7.65%. يعني إذا عطوهم $10 عم بيوفروا ال7 سنتس 0.65. إذا عطوهم $10,000 عم بيوفروا، إذا عطوهم 100,000 عم بيوفروا. بس مثل ما حكيم بالماضي it's not what you call it, it's really what it is. يعني إذا عن جد هيدا الإنسان موظف سميه شو بدك، القانون رح يسميه موظف. هيدا السبب ليه في كتير رب عمل وفي كتير موظفين هن موظفين وعارفين حالهم موظفين، بس بيتفقوا مع الشخص انه let's call me an independent contractor لما ادفع ال 7.6%. let me call you an independent contractor لما ادفع ال 7.65%. والهيدول الاشخاص وقت بيجوا وقت التقاعد تبعهم ما رح يكون عندهم مصاري، ما رح يجيهم social security. هيدا منه حق مكتسب، هيدا بدك تشتغل عليه، بدك تشتغل، بدك تساهم، بدك تلاقي. هيدي من النقاط اللي حكيين عنها بالماضي ورح نرجع نذكر فيها اليوم. السوشيال سيكوريتي ريتايرمنت هي مش للأشخاص، مش كل إنسان هو مواطن أمريكاني حق مكتسب، مش كل ست بيت مش شاغلة مش مساهمة ما عندها كريدتس حق مكتسب. absolutely not. فقط للأشخاص اللي هن شاغلين وشاغلين لوقت طويل. السوشيال سيكوريتي ريتايرمنت ايج بس بهم الأشخاص اللي هن مساهمين، وإلا it does not really matter. القانون بيقول إنه the earliest you can file for social security retirement is 62. بس ما معناتها فيك تبلش تقبض أو لازم تبلش تقبض social security retirement من age 62، لأنه كل ما بتطول لحتى تبلش تقبض social security retirement كل ما المبلغ بيعلى أكتر وأكتر وأكتر. إذا نطرت لعمر 65 المبلغ أعلى بكتير من عمر 62، وإذا نطرت لعمر 67 المبلغ أعلى بكتير من وقت 65، وإذا نطرت لعمر 70 هيدا أعلى مبلغ بتقدر تحصله. إذا نطرت ل 75 المبلغ ما رح يزيد. يعني المبلغ إذا بدك تاخد أجمل مبلغ وأعلى مبلغ ممكن بتنتظر لتبلش تقبض social security retirement بعمر 70 مش قبل عمر 70. المعدل كان بال 2019 أغلبية الأشخاص اللي كانوا ريتايرد وبلشوا يحصلوا على social security retirement هو كان تقريبا $1473. يعني ما عم نحكي عن مبالغ هائلة. مشان هيك بحق له الإنسان يكون على social security retirement ويشتغل on the side. ما في مشكل أبدا بهذا الموضوع. طيب إذا كنت أنت أغنى رجل بالعالم جيف بيزوس وكتير مساهم، هل أنت رح تحصل على ملايين من السوشيال سيكوريتي ريتايرمنت؟ absolutely not. the maximum اللي بتقدر تحصل عليه هو لسنة 2020 هو $3011 $3011. so again مش لأنك أنت غني كتير، مش لأنك أنت أغنى رجل، مش لأنه أنت بليونير أو مليونير يعني مساهم كتير معناتها أنت بدك. لأنه في شغلة هون بدي أقولها، إنه 15.3% بيوقف من بعد ما دخول الإنسان على 137,700. يعني الإنسان اللي بيعمل ملايين ما عم يدفع 15.3% على الملايين، عم يدفع فقط على مبلغ معين بالبداية. ورب العمل اللي عم يدفع ملايين لهيدا الموظف مش عم يدفع 15.3% على الملايين، عم يدفعها فقط على أول تقريبا $140,000. هيدي نقطة كمان مهمة. بفتكر الوقت خلص. نقطة هون اللي كنا بدنا نوصلها إنه ما ننبسط إنه نحن. وعلى فكرة كمان مرة الانديبندنت كونتراكتور مثل الموظف. صحيح الموظف النص هو بيدفعه والنص الثاني رب العمل بيدفعه. الانديبندنت كونتراكتور كمان المفروض يدفع فايكا تاكسز، بيقدر يدفعهم باخر السنه وقت اللي بيعمل الضريبه تبعه، او بيقدر يعملهم estimated quarterly. هو كمان مسؤوليته. بس شو بيدفع all of the 15.3%، لانه ما في رب عمل يدفع عنه هون، هو independent contractor. اذا دفع ساعتها وقت اللي بيجي وقت الريتايرمنت في عنده مصاري هون ناطرته، واذا ما دفع that is a problem. بس المسؤولية على اثنين، إن كان employee، إن كان employer، ولا إن كان independent contractor. وكمان مرة هيدا الفايكا تاكس، هيدا ضريبة على العمل، هيدا ضريبة لأنه عم نشتغل، بدنا نساهم بجزء صغير من عملنا، بجزء صغير من الدولار تبعنا. أنا 7 سنس و 7.56%، ورب العمل تبعي 7.56%، وإذا كنت أنا self employed 15%. هذا ما خصه بالإنكم تاكس. الإنكم تاكس شيء تاني، هو بالإضافة للفايكا تاكس. ثانك يو رامي. لبكرة
شكراً.
مع المحامي مايكل بانكستين والبانكربسي. Thank you very much, Attorney Patrick Horan.
You are welcome. Talk to you soon.
Thank you.